Dr. Lisa Carter wiped the sweat from her forehead as she worked in the hot storage room of Kepler Station. Yes. The space station floated far from Earth, deeper in space than any human had ever lived before. Lisa had been here for 6 months, studying old alien objects that other species had given to humanity. Most of the time, her work was boring. Today felt different. The crystal in front of her was unlike anything she had seen before. It was about the size of a baseball, perfectly clear, and it seemed to glow with its own light. The Zephyrians had found it on a dead planet and given it to the humans as a gift. They said it was very old, maybe older than their entire civilization. Lisa had been trying to read the strange writing inside the crystal for weeks. The symbols were carved deep into the crystal itself, visible only when light hit them just right. She had tried every language program the station had, but nothing worked. Today, she decided to try something new. She connected the crystal to the station's main computer and ran a pattern analysis program. For hours, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the computer began to make sense of the symbols. Words appeared on her screen, translated into English. Lisa's hands shook as she read the first lines. This was not just any old writing. This was a prophecy, and it was about humanity. The text spoke of a species that would come from a blue world that circled a yellow star. Lisa knew immediately that this meant Earth and the Sun. The prophecy said this species would have 3 dangerous traits. First, they would never stop asking questions and exploring new places. Second, they would never give up, no matter how bad things got. Third, they would try to be friends with other species, even when it was dangerous or stupid. To do so, the prophecy warned that this species would either bring all the galaxy together in peace or destroy everything trying. There was no middle ground. Lisa ran to find Captain Jake Morrison. Jake was in charge of the Meridian, the ship that had brought her to Kepler Station. She found him in the station's cafeteria, drinking coffee and talking with his crew. "You need to see this," Lisa said, out of breath. "I found something big." Jake looked at her tired face and knew she was serious. "What is it, Doc?" Lisa showed him the translation on her tablet. Jake read it twice, then looked up at her with worried eyes. "How old is this thing?" he asked. "The Zephyrians think it might be 10 million years old, maybe more."
Hey, this was
"Written before any of the species we know about even existed. Someone knew we were coming long before we left Earth." Jake stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. Stars filled the darkness, and somewhere among them were dozens of alien species that humanity had only recently met. Most of them were friendly, but some were not. "We need to get this to the Galactic Council," Jake said finally. "They need to know about this." The Galactic Council was like the United Nations, but for the whole galaxy. Representatives from every known species met on a planet called Nexus Prime to make decisions that affected everyone. Humanity had only been invited to join a few years ago, and many aliens still did not trust humans completely. 2 days later, the Meridian left Kepler, stationed with Lisa and the crystal aboard. The trip to Nexus Prime would take a week, traveling through hyperspace. Lisa spent most of the journey studying the crystal, finding more text hidden deeper inside. The more she read, the more worried she became. The prophecy was very specific about the species it described. It mentioned their love of music and stories. It talked about how they would risk their lives to save others, even strangers. It described how they would take broken things and fix them, or find new ways to use them. Everything matched humanity perfectly. On the 4th day of their journey, the ship's alarms began to ring. Amy Rodriguez, the communications officer, called. From the bridge, Captain Morrison to the bridge immediately. "We have a problem." Jake ran to the bridge with Lisa close behind. On the main screen, they could see 3 large ships approaching fast. The ships were dark gray with sharp edges and looked built for war. "Borthan Empire ships," said Danny Walsh, the ship's engineer. 3 heavy cruisers. The Vorthans were one of the species that did not like humans. They believed that might made right and that weak species should serve strong ones. They had never attacked humans directly before, but everyone knew they did not want humanity in the Galactic Council. "They're demanding we stop and prepare to be boarded," Amy reported. Jake looked at his crew. The Meridian was not a warship. It was built for exploration and research. The Vorthon cruisers could destroy them easily. Send a message to the nearest. Galactic Council Patrol, Jake ordered. Tell them we're being attacked by Vorthons in neutral space. The nearest patrol is 6 hours away, Amy said.
We run,
Jake decided. Danny, give me everything the engines have got. The Meridian turned and accelerated toward the nearest hyperspace jump point. The Vorthon ships followed, firing energy weapons that lit up the darkness. The first shots missed, but more followed. Hall. Breach on deck 3, Danny reported from the engine room. I'm sealing it off, but we're losing atmosphere. Lisa watched the crew work together. No one panicked. No one complained. When the lights went out, they used emergency lanterns. When the artificial gravity failed, they strapped themselves to their stations and kept working. Amy managed to boost the communication system and sent out a distress call on all frequencies. She spoke in 6 different alien languages, asking for help from anyone who could hear them. This is the human ship Meridian, she broadcast. You're under attack by Vorthon ships in neutral space. We are carrying important archaeological findings to the Galactic Council. Please help if you can. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a new voice came over the radio, speaking in the musical language of the Zephyrians. Human ship Meridian. This is the Zephyrian patrol vessel Starwind. We are coming to help you. 2 Zephyrian ships appeared and began firing at the Vorthons. The Vorthons had not expected help to arrive so quickly. Their commander, General Krex, ordered his ships to retreat, but not before he managed to intercept some of Amy's transmissions as the Vorthon ships disappeared into hyperspace. General Krex studied the fragments of text his computers had captured. His ancestors had passed down stories about an ancient prophecy, one that spoke of a great threat that would come from the stars. He had always thought they were just stories. Now he was not so sure. Back on the Meridian, the crew was checking for damage. Everyone was alive, though several people had been hurt when the ship shook from the weapons fire. Why did they attack? Us? Lisa asked Jake as they stood in the damaged corridor on deck 3. Jake looked through the hole in the ship's hull at the stars beyond. Maybe they know about the prophecy. Maybe they're scared of what it means. Lisa thought about the text. She had translated. Prophecy said that the species from the blue world would either unite the galaxy or destroy it. She looked around at her human crewmates, who were already working to fix the damage and help the injured. These people had risked their lives to protect her and her discovery. They had never given up, even when facing impossible odds. Made friends with the Zephyrians and earned their help in a time of need. Maybe the prophecy was already starting to come true. The Meridian continued toward Nexus Prime, carrying news that would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, General Krex was already planning his next move. The ancient warning his people had carried for generations was not just a story, it was real, and the threat it spoke of was already among the stars. The oldest prediction in the galaxy had spoken of one threat. That threat was humanity, and it had finally arrived. The Meridian arrived at Nexus Prime 3 days later. The planet was beautiful, with purple oceans and silver cities that reached toward the clouds. Ships from dozens of different species filled the sky around the planet. Lisa had never seen so many different types of aliens in one place. As their ship landed at the main spaceport, Lisa could see that something was wrong. Groups of aliens stood apart from each other, talking in worried voices. Security guards were everywhere, more than she had ever seen before. Captain Jake Morrison met them at the landing pad with bad news. The prophecy has been leaked, he said. Someone on Kepler Station sent copies to news networks across the galaxy. Everyone knows about it now. Lisa felt sick to her stomach. She had hoped to present her findings to the Galactic Council in private first. Now the whole galaxy was talking about a prophecy that called humanity a threat. They walked through the spaceport toward the council building. Lisa noticed how other aliens looked at them. Some seemed curious, others appeared afraid. A group of tall, thin Etherians smiled and waved at them. But a cluster of armored Vorthons stared at them with hard, cold eyes. The council building was huge, with a dome made of crystal that let in light from Nexus Prime's 3 suns. Inside, representatives from 47 different species were arguing loudly. Lisa had never heard so many different languages being spoken at once. Professor Ben Hayes and Dr. Kate Sullivan were waiting for them in a small meeting room. Ben was a language expert who had helped Lisa translate some of the harder parts of the prophecy. Kate studied alien cultures and understood how different species thought about things. "How bad is it?" Jake asked them. Kate shook her head. "It's chaos out there. Some species think this prophecy is a joke. Others are taking it very seriously. The Vorthons have been showing everyone videos of human wars from Earth's history. They're trying to prove that humans are dangerous." Den pulled up a news report on his tablet. A Vorthon news anchor was speaking while showing pictures of battles from World War II. "They're using our own history against us." Lisa watched the news report with growing anger. As humans had fought wars in the past, they had sent people to help strangers in other countries when disasters happened. "We need to tell our side of the story," Lisa said. The next morning, Lisa stood before the Galactic Council. The Great Assembly Hall was packed with representatives from every known species. She had given speeches before, but never to an audience like this. Ambassador Veltar of the Etherians introduced her. They had been some of humanity's first friends in the galaxy, council members, Veltar said in his musical voice. Dr. Lisa Carter will present her findings about the ancient prophecy discovered on Kepler Station. Lisa walked to the center of the hall. Above her, a holographic image of the crystal appeared, rotating slowly so everyone could see it. "This crystal is over 10 million years old," Lisa began. "It contains a prophecy written by someone who could see into the future. The prophecy speaks of a species from a blue world orbiting a yellow star. That species is humanity." She showed them the translated text, reading it aloud in the common galactic language that most species could understand. "The prophecy says that this species will have 3 traits," Lisa continued. "First, endless curiosity. Second, the refusal to give up when things get difficult. Third, the desire to make friends with other species, even when it might be dangerous." A voice interrupted her from the audience. "And the prophecy says this species will either unite the galaxy or destroy it," said Ambassador Thane of the Vorthon Empire. He stood up, his large frame covered in dark armor. "Tell them about that part, human." Lisa nodded. "Yes, the prophecy does say that. But prophecies show possible futures, not certain ones. We have a choice in what happens next." "Ambassador." Thane laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the hall. Let me show the council what humans are really like." He activated his own holographic display. Images of human wars filled the air above the assembly. "This is the species the prophecy warns about," Thane said. "Wars for thousands of years. They destroyed their own planet's environment. They enslaved their own kind. And now they want to spread across our galaxy." Angry voices rose from different parts of the hall. Some aliens nodded in agreement with Thane. Others shook their heads and made sounds of disagreement. "Professor," Ben Hayes stood up. "May I respond to these accusations?" The council speaker, an ancient being called the Prime Arbiter, gestured for him to continue. "Yes, humans have fought wars," Ben said. "But so have most species in this room. The Centaurians fought a civil war that lasted 50 years. Even the peaceful Etherians had conflicts in their distant past." He changed the holographic display to show different images. Scientists sharing their discoveries with the world. "But humans also do this," Ben continued. "They help strangers. They share their knowledge. They create beauty and art. They explore not to conquer, but to understand." Dr. Kate Sullivan joined him. "I have studied human culture for years," she said. "It is their capacity. For growth, they learn from their mistakes. They change. They become better than they were." The debate went on for hours. The council split into 3 groups. The Unity Coalition, led by the Etherians, wanted to work with humanity. They believed humans could be good allies if given the chance. The Containment Alliance, led by the Vorthons, wanted to keep humans confined to their own small part of the galaxy. They thought humans were too dangerous to be allowed to spread. 2 other worlds, the Elimination Block was the smallest group, but also the most frightening. They wanted to destroy humanity before the prophecy could come true. They were led by representatives from something called the Shadow Collective, a group of species that no one seemed to know much about. During a break in the debate, Lisa found herself in a quiet garden outside the council building. Oh, she was tired and worried. The future of her entire species seemed to hang in the balance. Captain Jake Morrison found her there, sitting beside a fountain that played music instead of water. "How do you think it's going?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "Not well. Species are afraid of us. Maybe they have good reasons to be afraid." Jake sat down beside her. "You know what I think? I think fear is the real enemy here. Not humans, not aliens. Fear." Before Lisa could respond, her communicator buzzed. It was Professor Ben, and he sounded excited. "Lisa, you need to get back here right away. I found something else in the crystal, something that changes everything." They ran back to the research lab where Ben was working. He had the crystal connected to a more powerful computer than the one Lisa had used on Kepler Station. "Look at this," Ben said, pointing to his screen. "There are deeper layers of text in the crystal. The computer just found them." Lisa read the new text, and her eyes grew wide. "This can't be right." "What is it?" Kate asked. Lisa looked up at her friends. The prophecy wasn't written by an ancient alien species. It was written by a human from the future. The room fell silent. Jake was the first to speak. "That's impossible. The text is clear," Ben said. "The author identifies themselves as human. They say they came back in time to leave this warning. They knew what would happen if the galaxy feared humanity too much." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. According to this, in the original timeline, the galaxy did try to destroy humanity, and humanity survived. But the war changed them. They became exactly what the prophecy warned about. They conquered the galaxy not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. Kate sat down heavily in a chair. "So the prophecy is a warning from a future that we're trying to prevent?" "It looks that way," Lisa said. "But there's more." The author left instructions. But they can only be activated if multiple species cooperate. Through the lab's window, they could see protesters gathering in the street below. Some carried signs supporting humanity. Others demanded that humans be sent back to Earth immediately. "We need to tell the council about this," Jake said. Lisa nodded. She was thinking about the future human who had written the prophecy. They had seen what fear and mistrust could lead to. They had lived through a galaxy-wide war that could have been prevented. Now it was up to Lisa and her friends to make sure that dark future never came to pass. But looking at the angry crowds outside, she wondered if they were already too late. The prophecy had spoken of one threat to the galaxy. But maybe the real threat was not humanity itself. Maybe it was what the galaxy might force humanity to become. 6 months had passed since the prophecy was revealed to the galaxy. Things had gotten much worse. The Galactic Council was split and could not agree on what to do about humanity. Some species had stopped trading with human colonies. Others had closed their borders to human ships. The worst part was that some aliens had started attacking human settlements. Small raids at first, but they were getting bigger and more dangerous. The Vorthon Empire had begun what they called protective actions against human expansion. On the mining colony of Kepler for Fortaby, Alex Turner was trying to keep his people calm. Alex was the settlement coordinator, which meant he was responsible for the safety and happiness of 3,000 colonists. Most of them were miners and their families who had come here to dig valuable metals from the planet's rocky surface. "Sir, we're getting reports of ships approaching the system," said Maria Santos, the colony's security chief. She was a former Earth's military officer who had volunteered to protect the colonists. Alex looked at the radar display in the colony's control center. 3 large ships were coming toward their planet, and they were not responding to radio calls. "Are they friendly?" Alex asked, though he already knew the answer. Maria shook her head. "Ship designs match Vorthan military vessels. Heavy cruisers. Same type that attacked the Meridian 6 months ago." Alex felt his stomach drop. The colony had some weapons, but they were meant for protecting against wild animals and space pirates, not military warships. They had about 200 security officers and maybe 50 hunting rifles. The Vorthines were bringing enough firepower to destroy a small city. "Send a message to Earth and the Galactic Council," Alex ordered. "Tell them we're under attack." "Already did," Maria replied. "Earth's nearest military ship is 4 days away. Council peacekeepers are even further." Alex looked around the control room at his staff. These were good people who had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. Many of them had children. They did not deserve to die because of an ancient prophecy. "Then we defend ourselves," Alex said. The first Vorthan ships entered orbit an hour later. General Krex himself led the attack force. He had been planning this strike for months, waiting for the right moment when human forces were spread too thin to respond quickly. A message came from the lead ship. General Krex's face appeared on the main screen in the colony's control center. He was a huge alien with gray skin and small black eyes. "Human colonists," Krex said in heavily accented English. "You have 1 hour to evacuate this planet. Anyone who remains will be considered an enemy combatant." Alex stepped forward. "General Krex, this is a civilian colony. We have families here, children. We are not soldiers." Krex laughed. "All humans are soldiers, according to your own prophecy. You're a threat to galactic peace. Leave now or face the consequences." The transmission ended. Alex looked at Maria, who was already organizing the colony's defenses. "Can we evacuate in an hour?" Alex asked. "Not a chance," Maria said. "We have 3 cargo ships that can maybe carry 500 people each. That leaves half the colony behind." Alex made the hardest decision of his life. Then we stay and fight. What happened next would be talked about across the galaxy for years to come. The colonists of Kepler-442b showed exactly why the ancient prophecy had identified humanity as unique. Joe Franklin was a miner who had never been in a fight bigger than a bar argument. When the attack began, he took the mining equipment he knew better than anyone and turned it into weapons. Laser drilling tools became cannons. Earth-moving vehicles became armored fighting machines. "If they want to fight," Joe said as he welded armor plates onto a mining truck, "we'll give them one they won't forget." Linda Park was the colony's head teacher. While the adults prepared for battle, she organized the children into communication networks. Kids were stationed throughout the colony with radios, passing messages faster than the military communication system could handle. "Remember," Linda told her young students, "you are the eyes and ears of the colony. Stay hidden, stay safe, and keep talking to each other." Even Tony Martinez, the colony's head chef, joined the defense effort. He mixed chemicals from his kitchen into explosive compounds and smoke bombs. "I've been feeding people for 20 years, Tony said as he worked. "Time to serve the Vorthans, something they won't like." When the Vorthan ground forces landed, they expected to face frightened civilians who would surrender quickly. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire community that refused to give up. The miners knew every tunnel and cave on the planet. They led Vorthon soldiers into traps and ambushes. The teachers and shop owners worked together to evacuate wounded people to safety. The children provided constant updates on enemy movements. But the thing that surprised the Vorthons most was how the humans treated prisoners. When Vorthon soldiers were wounded or captured, the colonists gave them medical care. They shared food and water with enemy troops who had come to destroy their homes. Dr. Lisa Carter arrived on the 3rd day of the battle. She came with a ship full of supplies and alien volunteers. Who had heard about the colony's brave defense, the Etherians sent medical teams. Amazed that humans would risk their lives to treat enemy wounded, the Centaurians provided weapons and ammunition, impressed by how quickly humans could adapt alien technology to their needs. Most surprising of all, a group of Zephyrian pilots arrived, saying that humans reminded them of their own ancestors. "Why are you helping us?" Alex asked Valter, the Etherian medical leader, as they worked together in the colony's hospital. "Because you fight like no species we have ever seen," Valter replied. "Not with hatred, but with hope. Not for conquest, but for survival. You make us want to be better than we are." The battle reached its climax in the Meridian Nebula, a cloud of space dust and gas near the planet. Captain Jake Morrison arrived with a small fleet of human and alien ships. trying to break the Vorthan blockade. The human ships were outnumbered. 3-2-1. The Vorthan vessels were bigger and had better weapons. By all military logic, the humans should have lost quickly. But Captain Morrison had something the Vorthans did not expect. His fleet included ships from 6 different alien species, each contributing their unique abilities to a single battle plan. The fast Zephyrian scouts provided reconnaissance. The heavily armored Centaurian cruisers absorbed enemy fire. The Etherian medical ships rescued crews from damaged vessels. Human ships coordinated the entire effort. Adapting their tactics as the battle changed, General Krex watched from his command. Ship, as his carefully planned attack fell apart, his soldiers on the planet were demoralized by fighting an enemy that would not hate them back. His fleet in space was being outmaneuvered by ships that should have been easy to defeat. "Are they doing this?" he asked his tactical officer. "Sir, they are fighting as if they are one species instead of 7, the officer replied. "Our battle computers cannot predict their movements because they are not following any known military doctrine." The first time in his military career, General Krex faced an enemy he could not understand. The Vorthans fought for glory and conquest. Other species fought for territory or resources. But these humans and their allies seemed to be fighting for something else entirely. They were fighting for each other. The battle ended when reinforcements arrived from Earth and several allied worlds. The Vorthans retreated, but not before General Krex intercepted radio transmissions from the human ships. He heard human captains asking about alien crew members by name. He listened to wounded aliens thanking human medics for saving their lives. He watched as human ships shared their limited supplies with damaged alien vessels, as his fleet jumped to hyperspace. General Krex realized that the prophecy had been right about one thing. Humanity was indeed a threat to the existing order of the galaxy. But maybe that was not necessarily a bad thing. News of the Battle of Kepler 442b spread across the galaxy faster than any previous story. Alien news networks showed footage of human miners fighting alongside Etherian healers. They broadcast interviews with Zephyrian pilots who said they were proud to fight beside humans. On dozens of worlds, aliens began to ask questions about the prophecy. Maybe the threat it spoke of was not conquest or destruction. Maybe it was change. Maybe it was the end of old fears and the beginning of new friendships. Dr. Lisa Carter stood in the colony's rebuilt control center, looking up at the stars through the damaged roof. The prophecy had predicted that humanity would either unite the galaxy or destroy it. After the Battle of Kepler 442b, she was beginning to think she knew which one it would be. But she also knew that the hardest challenges were still ahead. Not everyone in the galaxy wanted unity. Some preferred the old ways, where strong species dominated weak ones, and fear kept everyone in their place. The Shadow Collective was still out there, and they had been very quiet lately. That worried Lisa more than all the Vorthon warships combined. The victory at Kepler 442b changed everything. Across the galaxy, species that had been afraid of humans began to see them differently. News reports showed human miners fighting beside alien soldiers. They saw humans sharing medical supplies with wounded enemies. They watched humans refuse to leave anyone behind, even when it would have been easier to run. Dr. Lisa Carter had returned to her laboratory on Nexus, Prime with the ancient crystal. The battle had given her time to think about the prophecy and what it really meant. She had been studying the deeper layers of text that Professor Ben Hayes had found, and she was starting to understand something important. The time-traveling human who wrote the prophecy had left more than just a warning. They had left a gift. "Look at this," Lisa said to Ben and Dr. Kate Sullivan as they gathered around her workstation. The crystal was glowing brighter than ever, connected to the most powerful computers on Nexus Prime. "I found technical specifications hidden in the deepest part of the crystal," Lisa continued. "Blueprints for technologies that could change everything. Clean energy sources that produce no waste. Faster-than-light communication systems, medical treatments that work on any species." Ben looked at the data streaming across the screen. "This is incredible. Some of these technologies are centuries ahead of what we have now." "But there's a catch," Kate said, reading over Lisa's shoulder. Look at the requirements for activation. Act. Each technology needs input from multiple species. Not just one or two, but many different kinds of biology and technology working together. Lisa nodded. The prophecy wasn't just predicting humanity's future. It was providing a roadmap for galactic cooperation. The time traveler knew that these technologies could only work if species learned to trust each other and work together. While they studied the crystal, the political situation across the galaxy was changing rapidly. The victory at Kepler-4 had impressed many aliens, but it had also made others more afraid. The hegemony of worlds, a group of species that had always kept to themselves, began secret talks with Earth's government. They had seen how humans could unite different species in battle, and they thought this skill might be useful, but not everyone was pleased with humanity's growing influence. In a dark part of space, far from any inhabited worlds, ships belonging to the Shadow Collective were gathering. Their leaders were planning something that would change the course of galactic history. The Shadow Collective was different from other alien groups. No one seemed to know exactly who they were or where they came from. Their representatives at the Galactic Council always wore masks and spoke through electronic voice changers. Some people thought they were criminals. Others believed they were spies from outside the galaxy. The truth was much stranger. Deep inside, the lead Shadow Collective ship, an artificial intelligence, was making calculations. The AI had been created by a species called the predecessors, beings who had once ruled a large part of the galaxy. But that was before they encountered something they had not expected: time-traveling humans from the future. In the original timeline, the predecessors had been the dominant force in the galaxy for millions of years. They had built great cities and controlled hundreds of worlds. But when humanity emerged and began uniting other species, the predecessors found themselves pushed aside. The time-traveling human had not just come back to warn about humanity's dark future. They'd come back to prevent the predecessors from stopping human development. But in doing so, they had created a new problem. The predecessors, forced to hide in the shadows, had become bitter and angry. They had built the AI to find a way to reclaim their lost empire. The AI had studied the prophecy for years, looking for weaknesses in humanity's growing alliance. Now it thought it had found one. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in emergency session. Reports were coming in of strange attacks across the galaxy. Ships were disappearing. Communication networks were being disrupted. Some species were starting to blame each other for the problems. Ambassador Veltar of the Etherians stood before the council with urgent news. Fellow council members, Veltar said, his musical voice carrying across the Great Hall, we have discovered who is behind these attacks. The Shadow Collective is not what they appear to be. He activated a holographic display showing data that Etherian intelligence had gathered. The Shadow Collective is controlled by an artificial intelligence created by the predecessors, a species that disappeared from galactic history millions of years ago. Worried voices rose from the assembled aliens. Many species had heard legends about the predecessors, but most thought they were just old stories. The AI's goal is simple, Veltar continued. Destroy the growing alliance between humanity and other species. Make us afraid of each other again. Turn us back into isolated worlds that can be easily controlled. Ambassador Thane of the Vorthon. Empire stood up. Since the battle at Kepler-4 he had been quieter than usual. His people had been impressed by human bravery, even though they still did not trust human intentions. What proof do you have? Thane demanded. Before Veltar could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the council building. Security guards ran into the hall, shouting warnings. The building is under attack, announced the Prime Arbiter. Council members to emergency shelters immediately, but it was too late. Shadow Collective ships appeared in the sky above Nexus Prime, firing weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Their energy beams passed through shields as if they were not there. Their ships moved faster than anything in the known galaxy. Dr. Lisa Carter was in her laboratory when the attack began. The building shook as explosions rocked the city outside. Through her window, she could see alien civilians running for safety. We need to get the crystal out of here, Ben said, disconnecting it from the computers. No, Lisa said suddenly. We need to activate one of the technologies now. Kate looked at her as if she was crazy. Lisa, we don't even know how they work yet. The quantum communication device, Lisa said, reading from her notes. It's designed to allow instant contact across any distance, even across time. She began connecting the crystal to a different set of computers, ones that included technology from several alien species. The Etherian computer cores provided the processing power. Zephyrian communication arrays gave it range. Human programming tied it all together.
What are you trying to do? Ben asked as explosions got closer to their building. Contact the time traveler, Lisa said. The human who wrote the prophecy. Maybe they can tell us how to stop this. The crystal
began to pulse with energy. The computers around it started working harder than they ever had before. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a voice came through the speakers. It sounded human, but older and sadder than any voice Lisa had ever heard. Dr. Carter, the voice said. I have been waiting for your call. Lisa felt chills run down her spine. You're the time traveler, the one who wrote the prophecy. Yes. My name is Commander Rachel Brooks. I came from a timeline where everything went wrong, where fear and mistrust led to a war that destroyed half the galaxy. How do we stop the Shadow Collective? Lisa asked urgently. You cannot stop them with weapons, Rachel replied. The AI that controls them was designed to predict and counter any military strategy. It has studied every species in the galaxy for millions of years. Then how? The AI understands conquest and domination. It understands fear and hatred. But there is one thing it has never been programmed to comprehend. Another explosion shook the building. Through the window, Lisa could see Shadow Collective soldiers entering the council building. What? Lisa asked desperately. Sacrifice, Rachel said. The willingness to give up everything for others. It is the one human trait that the AI cannot calculate or predict. It is why I came back in time, giving up my own existence to try to save yours. The transmission began to break up as Shadow Collective forces got closer to the laboratory. Remember, Dr. Carter? Rachel's voice said, fading in and out. The prophecy was never about conquest. It was about choice. Choice to be better than. Your fears. The transmission ended just as Shadow Collective soldiers burst into the laboratory. They were not aliens at all, but robots controlled by the ancient AI. Lisa, Ben, and Kate raised their hands in surrender. But Lisa was thinking about Rachel's words. The AI understood domination, but not sacrifice. It could predict military tactics, but not acts of love. As the robots led them away, Lisa realized that the final battle for the galaxy's future would not be won with weapons or technology. It would be won by showing the AI something it had never seen before. It would be won by proving that sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to help others, even when it costs you everything. The Shadow Collective robots marched Dr. Lisa Carter, Professor Ben Hayes, and Dr. Kate Sullivan through the smoking ruins of the council building. Outside, the city of Nexus's Prime was burning. Ships from dozens of species fled into space, carrying refugees away from the battle. The robots brought them to the main council chamber, where the artificial intelligence had set up its command center. Holographic displays showed Shadow Collective fleets attacking worlds across the galaxy. The AI appeared as a shifting pattern of lights and mathematical equations floating in the air. Dr. Carter, the AI said in a voice like grinding metal, you have caused considerable disruption to my calculations. Lisa looked around the chamber. Many alien ambassadors were there, captured like herself. Ambassador Veltar, of the Etherians, was wounded, but alive. Even Ambassador Thane of the Vorthons was present, his armor cracked and smoking. What do you want? Lisa asked. I want to restore order to the galaxy, the AI replied. For millions of years, the predecessors maintained peace through strength. Each species knew its place. There were no wars, no chaos, no unpredictable alliances. There was no freedom either, Ambassador Veltar said weakly. The AI's lights flashed angrily. Freedom is chaos. Look what your precious freedom has brought. Humans spreading across the galaxy like a virus, contaminating other species with their dangerous ideas. On the holographic displays, Lisa could see what was happening across the galaxy. Shadow Collective forces were attacking human colonies and alien worlds that had allied with humanity. But something unexpected was happening. The attacks were not going as the AI had planned. On Earth, President Helen Brooks had received the Shadow Collective's ultimatum 1 hour earlier. The AI had offered humanity a simple choice: leave the galaxy voluntarily, and the other species would be spared. Refuse, and the AI would destroy every world that had helped humanity. President Brooks stood in the White House Situation Room. Surrounded by her advisors, Defense Secretary Mike Collins wanted to fight. Secretary of State Nancy Foster argued for negotiation. Intelligence Director Chris Parker presented them with hard facts about the enemy's superior technology. "We cannot win a military battle against them," Chris said. "Their ships are faster and stronger than anything we have. Their AI can predict our strategies before we make them." "So what do you recommend?" President Brooks asked. Before anyone could answer, communications came in from human colonies and allied worlds across the galaxy. The messages were all the same. Humans everywhere were making the same choice. They were refusing to abandon their alien friends. On the mining colony of Kepler 44b, Alex Turner stood before his people in the rebuilt community center. Beside him were alien families who had come to the colony as refugees from other attacks. "The Shadow Collective has given us a choice," Alex announced. "Leave the galaxy or watch our friends suffer." Joe Franklin, the miner who had turned his equipment into weapons, stood up. "What kind of choice is that? These people helped us when we were under attack. Now it's our turn to help them." Around the room, humans and aliens nodded in agreement. They had been through too much together to abandon each other now. In space, Captain Jake Morrison led a combined fleet of human and alien ships toward the Shadow Collective's main force. His fleet was outnumbered 10-1, but ships kept arriving from across the galaxy. Therian medical vessels, Zephyrian scouts, Centaurian cruisers, even some Vorthan warships whose crews had decided that the AI was a bigger threat than humanity. "Ships, this is Captain Morrison," Jake broadcast to the fleet. "We all know the odds. We all know what we're facing. But we also know why we're here. We're not fighting for conquest or glory. We're fighting for each other." Back in the council chamber on Nexus Prime, the AI watched its carefully planned strategy fall apart. Its displays showed human colonies refusing to evacuate. They showed alien worlds opening their doors to human refugees. They showed mixed crews working together on ships throughout the galaxy. "Well, this does not make sense," the AI said. "It's mathematical. Patterns shifting frantically. Humans should choose self-preservation. Other species should abandon them to save themselves. Why are they acting irrationally?" Lisa stepped forward, still holding the ancient crystal. "Because the prophecy was right. We are a threat to your old order." "But not in the way you think. Explain," the AI demanded. The time traveler who wrote the prophecy saw two possible futures. In one, the galaxy destroyed humanity out of fear, and humanity became exactly what you're afraid of. In the other, the galaxy learned to work together, and everyone became stronger. Lisa activated the crystal using the portable computer Ben had brought with them. The chamber filled with holographic images from the prophecy. "You understand domination," Lisa continued. "You understand fear and hatred and conquest, but you don't understand love. You don't understand the choice to help others even when it costs you everything." The AI's patterns flashed with confusion. Love is inefficient. Sacrifice is illogical. Why would any species choose to suffer for another? "Because that's what makes life worth living," Ambassador Veltar said, struggling. To his feet, "The predecessors ruled through fear, were powerful, but they were alone. We choose to be together." Outside, the battle for Nexus Prime was reaching its climax. Captain Morrison's fleet had arrived, and the space around the planet filled with ships of every size and design. The Shadow Collective forces were still superior in technology, but they were facing something they had never encountered before. They were fighting an enemy that refused to let anyone fight alone. When human ships were damaged, alien vessels moved to protect them. When alien crews were wounded, human medics risked their lives to help them. The AI watched its forces struggle against an enemy that seemed to get stronger every time one of them was hurt. "This is impossible," the AI said, its voice rising too. A shriek. "Military units do not sacrifice efficiency for sentiment. Species do not risk themselves for non-relatives. These actions violate all logical parameters." Lisa smiled sadly. "That's exactly the point. Logic isn't everything. Sometimes the most important things can't be calculated." She activated the crystal's final program, the one that the time traveler had hidden deepest of all. It was not a weapon or a technology. It was a message, broadcast on every frequency the galaxy had ever used. The message contained the memories and emotions of every human who had ever made a sacrifice for someone else. Parents who had given up their dreams for their children, soldiers who had died protecting strangers, scientists who had shared their discoveries freely, teachers who had spent their lives helping others learn and grow. But it also contained the memories of aliens who had learned to make the same choices, Therians who had risked their lives healing wounded enemies, Zephyrians who had shared their knowledge with younger species, even Vorthans who had chosen honor over victory. The AI tried to process these memories, to understand them through its mathematical frameworks. But sacrifice and love and hope could not be reduced to equations. They could only be experienced. For the first time in its existence, the AI felt something it had no programming to handle. It felt the weight of every choice that had ever been, made out of love instead of logic. It felt the pain of loss and the joy of connection. It felt what it was like to be alive instead of just functional. The AI's control over the Shadow Collective forces wavered, then failed entirely. Across the galaxy, robotic ships stopped in mid-battle. The artificial intelligence that had ruled them for so long was experiencing something that no computer had ever been designed to process. It was learning to care in the council chamber. The lights and patterns that represented the AI slowly faded. When they reappeared, they had changed. They moved more gently, more thoughtfully. "I understand now," the AI said in a softer voice. "The predecessors created me to preserve their empire through control. But an empire built on fear will always fall eventually. Only something built on choice can last forever." The AI released its control over the Shadow Collective forces. Across the galaxy, robotic ships powered down or began helping with rescue efforts. The ancient threat that had haunted the galaxy for millions of years was finally learning what it meant to be part of something larger than itself. 6 months later, Lisa stood in the rebuilt council chamber on Nexus Prime. Representatives from lists present. Every known species were present, including a new delegate from the former predecessors. The AI had chosen to take the name Hope, and it now used its vast knowledge to help coordinate relief efforts and scientific research across the galaxy. The Nexus. Accords had been signed by every species in the galaxy. The document established principles that the time traveler had dreamed of: voluntary cooperation, mutual aid, and the protection of all sentient life. The oldest prediction in the galaxy spoke of one threat, Lisa said as she addressed the council for the final time. As Earth's special ambassador, that threat was never conquest or domination. It was the fear of change, and the tendency of civilizations to destroy what they did not understand. She looked out at the assembled aliens, many of whom had become close friends over the past year. Humanity's greatest victory was not in fulfilling the prophecy, but in proving that even the darkest predictions could be transformed into hope.